Hey, what's up, dudes? Brad the Guitarologist here. We're going to open this package right here and see what's inside of it. I believe I know what this is. This is I think, a National amplifier. And yeah, let's go ahead and get this thing out of here and get a little better look at it and see what we're going to have to do to it. Today's video is sponsored by Boney Wright, the coolest new channel on YouTube. Have you ever wondered what's going on inside your brain when you experience deja vu? How bankers profit from your ignorance? Why the human skin gets so itchy? Or whether luck is a real thing? Then you need to subscribe to this channel. Their videos are both bite-sized and deeply thought-provoking. And remember, when you subscribe to their channel, you also support this channel, and I sure appreciate it. Okay, so here's what we have, and it looks rather interesting, I must say. Very cool. Definitely from the late 40s or early 50s. You can see the national badge. We've got a tear in the grill cloth, which I'm not sure is original or not. If it is original, it looks like the tear might be of the sort that we can repair possibly and make disappear. I might even bust out a sewing needle on that thing, because that might be worth trying to preserve if that is the original grill cloth. With just that one tear like that, it's possible we could make that sort of go away. We'll have to do some experimenting perhaps on that. I've never actually done that, busted out a sewing needle on a piece of grill cloth like that for restoration, but this might be a first. You can see we were missing the handle up here on top. Got some staining. This is the sort of tweed that you could expect to see. It's definitely the original tweed. This is different tweed than Fender was using, and it's just a different pattern of weave. If you were to compare the two, you would see exactly what I mean. Gibson's were also different. So I don't know. There's several different patterns of weave. Whatever VALCO, was using at the time is stuff that you see quite a lot on vintage suitcases and the like. Speaking of cloth, it looks like we've got some more cloth here on the back that matches that of the front. So I would say this is probably the original cloth, both on the back and on the front. And you can see a serial number beginning with a C. But look at this. Oh, this is a National-Dobro. This is National-Dobro Corporation. So this is early. This is earlier than I thought. This is not going to be late 40s or early 50s. This is going to be early 40s. Maybe even late 30s. This is an old amp, guys. Wow. You know, I can't remember for sure what year he said he thought this was, but I think National-Dobro Corporation ended in 1941. So this is quite possibly a pre-war amplifier. So that actually makes this a hell of a lot more interesting still. Let's go ahead and I guess pull the back door off the thing, pull the chassis out, or at least open that up, and we'll see what's on the inside. Yeah, now actually that I get a closer look at this thing, I think I'm going to take it outside and open it up, because if you look down in there, it looks like we've got some kind of nest. I don't know. It's either a nest or it's a big ball of LSD. But yeah, I think I'm going to take this outside and blow it out, kind of get this crap out of there. Actually, let's see, there's a little window we can just open up here. I guess it's supposed to be for easy tube changes, probably. Kind of interesting. I don't recall ever having seen anything quite like that. So you can see what I mean. Also, one of the tubes has come loose in shipping. It looks like it might be the rectifier tube, probably came out of that socket and rattled around for God knows how long. So we'll have to be careful when we take the chassis out that we don't we don't let that fall further and rattle around or break. Something's definitely been in here. Should be fun to find out how much damage it did, whatever little critter that was. There's our power transformer. The output transformer will no doubt be back here. But yeah, let's go ahead and I guess pull the, well, like I said, we'll take it outside and we'll pull the chassis outside so we don't get it everywhere. Actually, I decided to go ahead and take this back door off while we're in here, and I did not realize it, but it's actually two pieces. This piece is separate from that little bottom lip. Yeah, this grill cloth seems to be in pretty good shape. And from what I can tell, I don't see any additional holes or anything like that might indicate, you know, that it's not original, like it had been replaced or something at some point. It's definitely pulled over the years, you can see a little bit, but I think this is the original cloth. Okay, this little ledge back here is built in, I guess, to allow you to store the cable so that you can access it pretty readily without taking the back off. But we do indeed have the original National-Dobro Electro-Dynamic speaker. God knows what kind of shape that thing is going to be in, especially if the cone is original. Let's see what we got. G12RS C3237. Yeah, see, that doesn't, none of that stuff makes any sense in terms of a date. It's not a date code that I recognize, at least. But yeah, it's good to see the original speaker. We will have to, you know, figure out obviously the state of the Electro-Dynamic winding, and it's probably, that winding is probably also being used as a choke in the power supply, if that's if it's hooked up the way these normally are. There's the output transformer right down there. So we will have to, you know, kind of test out the integrity of all the wiring going back and forth through that big wire right there up to the chassis. And the other problem is, a lot of times, is that when you're working with amps that have electrodynamic speakers, a lot of times if they don't have this little coupler, this is actually nice to see because this thing should just unplug, and that just unplugs and allows you to separate the cabinet from the chassis, which is really nice. A lot of times you have to drag these two things along, including on later VALCO made national amplifiers. Usually you have to drag the speaker out also when you do any kind of servicing, so that's good. Let's take this thing outside and blow it out and see what kind of mess we've got on our hands inside the chassis. Alright, here we are with this chassis outside, and that gob of stuff, yeah, was some kind of mouse nest or something. The rectifier is a 5V4. I kind of expected a 5Y3, but it's not. It's 5V4. We do have a, I think it's a, yeah, 6J7. This is the type that has the cap on the top. We have a 6SC7 and a pair of 6V6. And these 6V6, I think these tubes are original. These are RCA Radiotron labeled tubes, and let's see, that would be the date code right there, Y2E, and they're both matched. And I would be willing to guess that they're probably original. There is a video Uncle Doug put up on an amp from a similar time frame, that was National-Dobro, and his also had these Radiotrons tubes still in there in his. So I'm thinking that these are absolutely original tubes to this amplifier, and we're going to try to keep this thing as original as we can. I'm curious what that code is going to be, because that will tell us probably a lot about the actual date of this amp. I'm thinking somewhere between 1938 and 1940, but the problem is I am not super adept at deciphering some of the older codes. The EIA standards kind of didn't get set in their ways until kind of the late 40s or 50s, and so it's kind of hard sometimes to date this older stuff. But anything this early, I mean, this is definitely pre-war, at least for the United States. I mean, we call it pre-war if it's not 1941, or 1942 even, because we didn't enter the war until late 1941. So to us, it's pre-war. I know it drives a lot of Europeans crazy, but you're just gonna have to deal with it. For the United States, pre-war is pre-Pearl Harbor usually. We got something right here. What's this? Bergdols. Interesting. American Radio and Service Company, Mount Vernon Street and W. Girard Avenue. So I was able to find listings for both of those addresses in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. One of them looks like it is now a Chinese restaurant, and this It looks like kind of a residential neighborhood, or sort of a, I don't know, it's got some businesses up and down the street there as well. And then the other address, this 2204 Mount Vernon Street, is not all that far away by the look of it, but it's in a kind of a different neighborhood. Really cool looking building, and it looks like it might have sold fairly recently for like $500,000, that building. But it just looks like it's in a, you know, slightly different type of neighborhood. I did some research on Bergdahls. I tried to come up with something on them as a radio shop, but I wasn't able to find any listings or anything. If somebody wants to go to the library somewhere there in Philadelphia and research that and let me know what they come up with, any history on Bergdahls, whether they sold national amplifiers, would be interesting to know. What's that? Pop 2960. And this also has a Bergdahls sticker on that right there. And what does that say? Pop 2960. That's probably their some kind of internal number for their servicing, perhaps. I don't know. But so maybe these tubes aren't. Maybe they're not original, and they were put. Maybe these tubes were put in by Bergdahls at some later date. I mean, it's possible, but just the fact that, man, they were in there tight too. Those suckers didn't want to come out. I'm thinking these got to be original tubes, man. Let's see the same sticker on there. But that code right there is probably our best bet at dating this amp. There's probably codes on these as well. Might as well pull those. And yeah, man, these things are in those sockets. That's not a worn out socket. Let's put it that way. I gotta set this down. Okay. The cool thing about some of these older amps too is they're usually labeled on the bases. You can see the 6SC7 there, and those are 6V6 labeled. So if you ever, you know, got the amp with no tubes in it, you would still be able to identify what tubes went in it. And there, again, Y2E, and I think that's going to tell us the date right there. And just the fact that it matches these, you know, tells me that okay, this one's RE5. And what does that say on the base? Yeah, 5V4 on the base there too. But I do want to try to date this thing before we really go much further, because it would just be interesting to see exactly what, you know, what year some of these components were from, because my hunch is I mean, it's definitely, like I said, it's pre-war, regardless of exactly what year. It's definitely pre-war, and it's definitely a very early tube amp. And yeah, once again, you can see the 6J7 designation on the base, but you can see how filthy this thing is too. As you can hear my dog in the background barking. Another Y2E date code, so we're definitely gonna have to look up this date code, Y2E, and the other one was, what I say, R something? RE5. We've got a shielded input section here. I'll probably pop these screws out, pop that off, and clean up the input section too. I'll also come in here and wipe all this down. And I'm just wondering whether or not that might be a you know, a very early service that this thing had received. Maybe they even just stuck that sticker on that to make somebody believe that they had replaced tubes when it didn't really need them, and they didn't really replace them. Sometimes that stuff happens, man. This thing is full of these little cocoons. I'm not sure what kind of species this is, but it's some kind of little insect. But there's been quite a few. That one was actually stuck on the side of the death capacitor right there, which was interesting. That's going to come out anyway, but it's just interesting that it was there. Yeah, I still need to do this, but I'm just taking this right now and just kind of sweeping this out with my happy brush. Okay, so there's that plate removed for the input jacks. And I'll tell you what, man, if somebody had told me they were going to send me a 1940 or 1938 amplifier that it had a mouse nest or something in it. I would have expected it to be a hell of a lot more far gone than this, with a lot more rust, and I would have just expected a lot more rust and things. Definitely will clean those jacks right there and clean the contacts to the chassis, because that's where they get their ground. And also the shielding is shielded right there too, so if that's not getting good ground, you know, you'll get a ton of noise probably. So we want to just clean all that stuff up. And again, there's the code. So it looks like 31A, possibly 007. But yeah, we'll clean all those up for sure. Clean the sockets. The sockets were extremely tight. I'm thinking that these tubes may have never even been taken out of these sockets since they were new. Probably the first one to even come out of the socket was that rectifier during shipping, because they were just, those are just really tight sockets. A lot of times when you get really old amps like this, the sockets are so loose, the, you know, tubes are practically falling out of it on their own. And this one, I had to wiggle for some time to get them out of there. So I'm thinking they've never even been out of there. So we'll definitely clean the jacks, clean the pot. I'm going to go ahead and take these screws out, and we'll open the thing up. But so far, so good. Okay, here we go. Moment of truth. Looking at the circuit. We've got a couple of grommets there we don't want to lose. That power cord I cut before I brought it outside because it was in shambles anyway. Yeah, this looks like it may be untouched. Oh, there goes all kinds of crap out of there. Look at there. Portend of things to come. Definitely a little dirtier on the inside there, but look at that. Is that a Thordson dry electrolytic capacitor? Is that what that is? A Thordson? This is Thord test. Interesting. And this could have some information on it too, possibly. No, not really. It's 40 microfarad. What the hell is that? Oh, that can't be original. That's somebody's job, surely. That one's original. Let's see what we have. There's another code, WP 3136. But you see, that's a piece of the cloth. Grill cloth up inside the amp. So this was a home to some critters, definitely at one point. We've got some what are these? EDJ 2000 30A 3084. That's a very similar code as the one we saw on that, isn't it? Because it was like, yeah, so that one's a 30. That's a 31A 007. So that's a similar kind of a code. So maybe they were made by the same company, or that is in fact a date code of some sort. But like I said, these very early date codes are kind of a little tougher to decipher. They're not as obvious. That one's seen better days. Look at that. That one's seen better days. And there's another one of those cocoons right there. You must really like the wax on those capacitors for some reason. There's another cocoon right there. But yeah, overall, I mean, that's definitely a date code, but I think that's a later capacitor. Right there, that 2, that's the 42nd week of what? 1952, 62, something like that. Whenever this thing was put in. I don't think this one is original. That's a Planet. Yeah, I would say this is later. That's a weirdo job right there, man. It's definitely a capacitor, but it's just weird the way they put it in. There's another capacitor hiding down there we'll probably need to replace. Yeah, man, this you know, this is probably not gonna be that big of a deal to service this. This is, I mean, pretty cut and dry. We're gonna have to replace some capacitors for sure. I'm not gonna risk firing this thing up and having a dead short on one of these caps and burning up a transformer. So, you know, I'm just gonna go through and do the full service, and I'm gonna assume these capacitors are dead, and I'm sure that's a safe assumption. We'll test all of these resistors to make sure that they're within spec or close. And yeah, pretty much some cleaning, and hopefully that'll be about it. And we need to also test the Electro-Dynamic speaker and make sure that that winding in there is good. But we'll just go forward from there. But yeah, if you'd told me that this, you know, you're going to send me a 1940 era amplifier pre-war, and it had a mouse nest in it, I would have expected a lot worse than this. Okay, so I've pulled the speaker out of this cabinet. I'm going to take the cabinet outside and clean it out as well, and we also need to see what we could do about this rip. We do have another code that I did not see before. C3237. I think that's the same thing we had over there, isn't it? Yeah. C3237. We've also got a C3237 date code right there. Or code. Got a code there on the cone. Speaking of the cone, this is a smooth cone speaker. We've got just deterioration. I don't think this cone is going to be salvageable. We've got a lot of rot up here along this edge. It's kind of unfortunate, but and there's, you know, there's no voice coil rub though. I'm surprised because that dust cap is completely just deteriorated. It's been eaten by moths probably. I'm shocked that. Oh, maybe there is some rub. This cone has probably about had it. I'm gonna, for now, go ahead and take the cabinet outside, clean it out. I'm gonna have to find a handle for it. We'll see what we can do about that cloth tear right there. We might sew that up. Okay, I've got this cabinet back on the bench. I talked to my wife, who is the seamstress in the family. She says she may be able to help me get this to try to get this to disappear. We may have a solution, but I need to get this thing out of here first before we can work on it. Okay, let's pull this cloth out of here so she can try to work some magic on it. Man, it's really filthy under this cloth too. And you know, I'd already kind of thought also about possibly, because there's so much at the bottom that was unused, that it might be worth trying to you know, take it off and then move the thing up, and then just put this up past the edge of the speaker to get it out of the way. But the problem is we got other rips down here as a result of the staples going into these crossbars. So though that kind of screws up that idea. So but yeah, this thing needs to be clean and stuff anyway. Jesus, filthy. Okay, well, I have managed to get a handle on this thing, and it looks okay. Looks the part. I've got the repaired grill cloth in here. There's the repair that my wife did for it, and I thank her for that. It's not perfect, but at least it salvaged the original grill cloth. The original speaker cone, on the other hand, I want to show you something. This is not good at all. Okay, you see the cone here. It has basically disintegrated right around the edge. I've never seen anything like it. When I got back in here just a second ago off camera, I pressed on this one more time. I noticed some rub, and I was going to turn the thing upside down and just see if I could, you know, kind of knock whatever little bit of dirt was in there. And I kind of just did this right here like this. And I turned it back over. At one point I heard kind of a poof kind of a sound just doing that. I thought maybe I can get you know, the dirt out of it. Then I heard like a little poof, and of course, you know, when you do that, I'm not touching the floor. No part of the actual cone should have been touching the floor at all by doing that. But I turned it back over, and this is what I saw. So this thing is like it was just dry rotted. right around the edge. I mean, the whole thing was just, and right here, actually, the damage was more extensive right here than I thought anyway. Because if you look out here to the side, you can see little kind of microscopic bits that had been eaten over in here as well, like over in there. See that little bits out, and then you got bits over here I did not notice before, and it was just like it basically had been eaten through. This cone is done for. So I decided to send this speaker off to the Speaker Workshop in Fort Wayne, Indiana. The Speaker Workshop is run and owned by Tom Colvin, who has been reconing speakers since 1986. They stock a wide variety of recone kits and parts for speakers. Their prices are competitive and their turnaround time is very fast. And if they can't fix it, it pretty much can't be fixed.
Let's see what kind of curveball Brad has thrown at us today. Oh, cool. A bunch of paper in a box. Alright, that's cute. Well, it looks perfect. I don't understand. It's nice, nice shape. Look at that. It's beautiful. National-Dobro. What are we doing? Look at this. This has been on there so long that this felt is just deteriorated. Wow. Electromagnet. So we have to test this, make sure we've got a reasonable impedance. You never really know what it is, and probably couldn't find out what the impedance of that electromagnet is in this output transformer. These are generally in the amplifier these days. But that's cool. Got an original cone number here. What's really neat is we have the whole cone here, so we can do mass weight density test on this. So when we're done with it, it's going to be sound exactly like it did originally.
A little dry, wouldn't you say?
A little bit, yeah. This spider here, this is paper. They're cloth today. They're a textile product today, cloth. This has a paper former voice coil, which is kind of cool. And that's what we're going to start with. So we'll measure this for mass, weight, density, so it's right, and go from there. We've got, I don't know, about 600 reconers in the United States these days, and most of them do a really good job. They do for putting parts in. They don't really get into it as deep as we do, but I was fortunate enough in my younger years to have spent time with a man named Bob Maxwell, who was friends with Pappy Fryman and Peter Jensen and Leo Farnsworth and all these great people at Magnavox. So when Bob and I were friends about 20 years ago, he was 93 at the time. He's a crotchety old bastard, but he sure gave me a lot of information. And what it does is he gave me enough information about how he and these guys work together trying to make great sound from speakers and from amplifiers, that I was able to understand a lot of what even Peter Jensen, who is kind of like my idol guy, on why he designed speakers and how he designed them the way he did. It's just really impressive. These deep thinkers were way back then, when today they're just happy to throw something in a speaker. And like I say, most reconers do a great job for putting parts in and making the job look nice. We go way deeper than that. This will sound exactly like it did when it was brand new, and maybe even a little better. Might have a little better range than it did. So thanks to Brad for giving us this opportunity. those fine parts. We saved these old gaskets. Look, they came off perfect. Those will look really nice when they're back on the speaker. And there's our original coil. That's going to be an oddball impedance. They've got those indentations in there to give it some strength, I'm sure. But the enamel on this wire, if we took our CFA and just rubbed on this, that enamel would come off. Because it's made from that stuff from the Congo years ago. It's pretty neat. All air dry adhesive. And it held on for a long time. Jeez, if we could flatten this stuff out, we could write notes on it.
Okay, guys, just got this speaker back from the speaker workshop. But here are those guys. If you want to check them out, the speaker workshop. They are located in Fort Wayne, Indiana. They will accept shipped speakers. So if you want to get something reconed, definitely hit these guys up. You can also check them out on reconing.com, or of course you can give them a call, or even send them an very old school fax. What the hell, guys? You still have a fax machine? Looks very nice. It is a ribbed cone, but that's probably actually going to it's probably going to give the cone actually a bit more strength, and probably will make it last a little bit longer. Also, whenever you rib a cone like that, you're sort of increasing the total surface area, so they can tend to be just a little bit louder. Also, at least that's been my experience. I'm not an expert on speakers, but that's kind of been my experience, and that's sort of my understanding of it. But yeah, man, looks great. He's used the original gaskets on there, so it's going to look the exact same as far as the gaskets go. I am going to go ahead and give this a little bit of a wash off here. Look, we've got a little bit of dirt on the outside of the speaker. I should have probably washed that off while I still had the old cone in there, but I'm going to give this just a light rub down just to kind of clean off some of the dirt there. Maybe try to get rid of a little bit of that corrosion. Okay, I'm just going to use a common scouring pad for this. There are a lot of instances whenever you're redoing old amplifiers, vintage amplifiers from, say, the 50s and 60s, where the speaker is not really that prized, or it really wasn't that great of a speaker to begin with, and probably isn't worth saving, or isn't an amplifier that really doesn't bring all that much money in today's market, and therefore really isn't all that worth saving. But this is one of those situations where we have an amplifier here that's from the first few years of the electric guitar's existence. I mean, we're talking about 1941, and for the USA at least, this is considered pre-war. This is not something that I want to just throw any old speaker in, and besides, it's a field coil anyway, so I would have to replace it with a field coil speaker even so. So, this is definitely probably one of the best candidates for a recone that you can think of. Possibly historically important amplifier, and the speaker is field coil. You have the output transformer still attached to it and everything. So I mean, you really need to make this right for the amplifier to retain its value, and this is just one of those situations where it's right to do it this way. Okay, there's a speaker back in the cabinet, and just a little pro tip on installing speakers in cabinets: don't ever over tighten these nuts, because if you over tighten those, you can severely warp the basket, and if that happens, you're going to get all kinds of problems. But yeah, back in there nicely. This is a very similar model to some of the other National amplifiers of the era, but I've been unable to find this exact model number, the model 75, in any schematic. I found like a model 50, and I found a schematic for a National-Dobro. This one's a 510-1, which has a 5Y3 rectifier. Does have two 6v6 push-pull output. Let's see, does it have an Electro-Dynamic speaker? Yes. And let's see, it has the 6J7 and the 6SC7, so it's very, very similar in design, if not exact, other than the rectifier type. Same story with the other one, the National-Dobro number 50, and this one has a Type 80 rectifier, so it might be from around the same era as this amp, but just used a different rectifier. All right, I think I made some headway on the dating of this amplifier. You can date it by the date codes on the tubes, and if we'll recall, the tube date codes are Y2E on those power tubes, also on these tubes as well. The only exception was this one. We'll look up that date code in just a second, but the Y2E date code, if we look at this, that indicates a date of shipment, and from 1936 to 1945 the codes were a letter for the year plus a number in the middle, plus the E for OEM sales. Lack of the E indicates a tube for distributor sale. The letters, okay, if we want to scroll down here, we'll see what the letters indicate, and Y is 1941. And this is probably one of the last of the National-Dobro amplifiers that was made before they changed over to VALCO and became VALCO in 1941. So just a very interesting, very historical amplifier, and we figured out a little bit more about it. But if we look up the other code, let's see, what was this one? RE5. Okay, I've searched through all this thing, and the only theory that really fits would be this 1940 for the year, because it's RE5. They probably just got those mixed up, and the E still stands for the OEM shipment. All right, so I skipped ahead a little bit on this thing, and been doing a little bit of wiring. I've gotten a lot of it done, but I haven't touched the electrolytic capacitors yet. But I wanted to show you this. Kind of interesting. They have a 40 microfarad capacitor. This one's coming off of the, not the plate, but the screen. So the 40 microfarad is further downstream than this one, which is a 20. And this is the reservoir cap at 20, and then it goes through the field coil and then comes down to the 40. So that's not right, obviously. So whoever recapped this had their head up their ass and did this wrongly. I'm going to take a look at that and see if with a 5V4 this 40 should be, it might be okay, but I'm thinking that might be too large for a 5V4. I don't know. So yeah, I was correct about that actually. If you look at the 5V4 data sheet here, we could see right there, filter input capacitor should be 10 microfarad. It does have a little asterisk, and it says higher values of capacitance than indicated may be used, but the effective plate supply impedance may have to be increased to prevent exceeding the maximum rating for peak plate current. I doubt we're going to be anywhere near exceeding the maximum peak plate current on this amp anyway. So probably what I'm going to do is just up it to 22 microfarad instead of the 10. The 10 would probably be a safe bet, but I think 22 is going to be just fine. We're going to go with 22. If we notice any problems, then we will back down to 10, but I think 22 should be cool. Here's another interesting and funny thing I just ran into. If you look at this weirdo thing that was installed, if we trace it over to here, it's not even hooked up. It's wrapped around. And they just had a massive cold solder basically just sitting on it. So this, that one was never hooked up properly, so I don't see how this thing ever worked right with the way that they had it. Okay, here's one last look at the inside of the amplifier before we put it all back together. As you can see, I replaced the electrolytic caps. I replaced all of the interstage coupling capacitors. Check these resistor values, and most of them were measuring within specs, so I've left all of those in there. And I expect this thing probably now at this point, it'll probably run for another 50 years without having to be touched, would be my guess. But let's fire it up for the first time. We'll bring it up slowly on the Variac, and we'll see what she sounds like. Okay, so one thing that's absolutely critical if you're going to troubleshoot an old amp like this is to have the field coil and everything plugged in. You have to obviously have the speaker plugged in as well. Luckily, there's enough lead here to allow you to kind of have the amp out of the cabinet and still be able to troubleshoot. Nothing so far, but that doesn't really mean much. We've got absolutely nothing. I wonder if that fuse might be blown. All right, I've got no sound. I've got nothing whatsoever. So let's back up here. Let's kill the power, and let's check the fuse first of all. And it wouldn't surprise me, the state of, you know, obviously some of the capacitors in these old amps, wouldn't surprise me if the fuse was blown. It doesn't look blown though. It is corroded though. Could also be the switch. Yeah, you see the corrosion. See the corrosion there on that. It's pretty. It's a pretty corroded fuse. And also want to make sure that it's not enormous in value while we have it out. See all the dust coming off of that. Oh shit, look at that. I just twisted the thing right off of it. Okie dokie. Well, just twisted right off of there. Okay, let's try that again. I would expect to see some kind of voltage there. I don't see anything. Could be a bad rectifier, possibly. Still got almost nothing. Okay. Why do I have almost nothing? Flip the switch the other direction just to see if that was causing the issue. There we go. There we go. Now we got something coming. Now we've got something coming. Yeah, there just wasn't enough voltage to start firing up that rectifier. But it's going now. I'm at 74 volts on the input. I don't know if you can see that or not. 74 volts, and we're climbing on the power consumption there. We'll keep an eye on that. We're at about 400 milliamps up there on the current. We're at 190 volts right there at that point right now of rectified DC, and that's at the reservoir node on the power rail there. That just means that's the first node where the amp gets its power from on the B+. I'm just kind of dialing it up back here sort of slowly. I also want to kind of keep from shocking these new capacitors to life. I don't like to just flip a switch on them. As you can see here, we're holding steady, 35.8 watts of power, but you see how steady it is. That's a good sign. We're only at 88 volts on the input. I don't hear anything though. I don't hear anything at the speaker. Let's put a cord in the input and just see what we're getting here, if anything. We've got nothing. It's totally dead. Why would it be totally dead? Let's test our other nodes on our power rail here and see what's going on downstream. And we got voltage there. And we got voltage. We got voltage on that plate. Oh, there's a little bit of speaker noise. We got voltage Hear it there? So the speaker's alive. 192 volts right there on that plate. We got voltage there. Alright. Huh. Well. So what's the deal, though? Why do we have nothing? No sound. No sound at the input. Definitely getting sound at the speaker. So I'm going to go ahead and dial it up a little bit more. Could have a totally dead tube as well. That's a possibility. I'm thinking we might have a tube issue, possibly. Let's take a look at the tubes. Okay, the 6V6s are hot. The 6SC7 is not that hot. It's kind of cold, actually. This first preamp tube is ice cold, like it's not even conducting. It could also, it's possible it's also getting grounded. Like if this cap right here gets grounded at all, that would be a problem, but it doesn't look like it is. Again, I don't think that's it. I think this tube is probably bad. Let's throw this on the tester and see what it comes up at. All right, I'm actually in the process of overhauling this tester, but it's good enough right now. I mean, it's all together, so we should still be able to test this. This is a 6J7. If we look down here at the scroll, let's go ahead and find our 6J7. 6J7, A1B7C11. A1B7C11. D2. F is 3459. Okay, we put it in the appropriate socket, and I've got a shoot, bust that. Which is which here? That can't be right. Hang on a second. I need the manual. Okay, let's see. Overhead connector caps or grid caps. 3 separately functioning grid caps are employed. The black dual cap accommodates large and small type tube caps used for all single cap tubes other than pin type cap. So we need to use the black one. The red one is for if you have 2 different caps on a tube. That's probably kind of a rare thing. See, this has 2 different sizes. We need this size here. Okay, to test this, we throw 3, 4, 5, and 9. So let's try 3. Okay, there's no short there. 4, 5, and 9. Dead as a doornail. Boom, dead as a doornail. Okay, let's go tube shopping. We need a 6J7, and I think my 6 volters are all in this. I think they're all in this box. Right there, boom. 6J7s, what do we want? Do we want a GE? I'd like to keep an RCA. There's a 6J7 RCA. You know what? I've got 3 GEs. I'm going to grab a GE. I'm going to grab this one too. Oh. Well, that definitely looks new old stock. I don't think it's been installed in anything before, so that ought to be a good tube. See, that one's bad too, but it's not as bad, and it's rising up a little bit. Yeah, see, it's trying to be good. But the song wasn't titled Johnny Trying to Be Good. It was titled Johnny Be Good. And again, trying. She's trying. It's creeping into good territory, but not great. I think that's a new old stock too, and I'm just wondering if these are just really finicky tubes. You know? Maybe that's why they stopped using them. I mean, we're in good territory. At least it looks like this tube, it takes a while to warm up. I haven't looked at the spec sheet for it yet, but I'm guessing that the 6J7 probably takes a while to warm up. Creeping on up. Like I said, I believe that to be a new old stock tube. It's just not measuring all that great. But that might be the best I'm going to be able to do right now. That might even be typical for a 6J7. I just don't know. It is measuring good, technically. Well, here's another one of those GE tubes, and I swear, man, if this is not new old stock, I will eat my hat, because, I mean, that looks to me like that's fresh. That is factory fresh right there. I mean, pretty much the same as the other one, though, right? I'm gonna give it a minute or two before I try to test it. Well, that one's deflecting. That's better than the other one. And it looks like it's still climbing a little bit, too, so... Yep, it's definitely still slowly climbing. You can see it moving there on the needle. So that's a good tube, at the very least. And I do believe, like I said, it's new old stock. And it's also possible, like I said, I'm still in the process of calibrating this tester. So it's possible that some of my calibration might be a little bit off on this thing. So, you know, after calibration, it could be that this thing is, you know, it's moving the needle more than it's actually showing on the tester right now. Okay, this is a new old stock RCA 6J7, and we'll see how this one tests. Ooh, that one is real strong. Yeah, that's the strongest one yet for sure. I think we might slap that one in this amp. What do you say? Up to what, about 68 or something like that on that one? That 6V6. Okay, here's the second 6V6. And we're about the same strength on that one, almost identical. The SE7 is dead as a doornail also. Both of these are testing dead as doornails. So yeah, I would say having two dead as a doornail preamp tubes would surely explain why we were getting zero sound, wouldn't you? Let's go shopping for a 6SC7 now. And I must be low on SCs. Must be. There's one right there. Okay, so here's that SC7. It is not the new old stock tongue sole I was hoping for. It came out of a Cunningham radio. It's a good tube. A little bit weak. Still, I think this one might work for our purposes. At least it's going to, you know, make the amp work. I'll look around a bit more to see if I can find another SC, but this one might have to do. Okay, so let's try that again. And then we'll dial it up with our new tubes in there. We've got that RCA 6J7, and we've got that one right there, which I think is also RCA, but it says Cunningham on it, but it's RCA made. Oop. We have sound. Man, that thing is dead quiet too. I can't hear it. I can't hear any hiss. I can now, but it's only after turning it way up. Oh, this is going to be a beauty. This thing is going to be a beauty. That's more than halfway up right there, and it is dead silent. The only thing you're going to be able to hear right now is my heater. Okay, so we definitely are good to go with this. I believe these tubes are going to be just fine. That's that 6J7 right there. That's a hell of a tube right there. That thing was deflecting like crazy. So that's a real hot, nice tube. NOS. This one, you know, unfortunately is used, but it does. I think it's going to serve the purpose. These were in really good shape too. Those are nice. This thing's putting out a lot of voltage. Our voltages seem pretty strong over here. Everything's very steady, idling really nicely right now. But I'm going to let this do this for a couple minutes, and then we will check the bias on these output tubes. 10.8. Maximum plate dissipation for 6V6 is 14 watts, and I think that's going to put us a little bit hot. What I say it was 10.8, so 14 times 0.7, because we want about 70% on a push-pull amp. It's about 9.8. It's actually not that far over. So you know what? It's only about 1 watt over the 70% mark. And that's not that far over. I'm going to leave it where it is. You're probably not going to crank this amp all the way up and jam on it for extended periods of time anyway. So it's not that big of a deal. I think we're going to be a-okay to roll with this. And plus, you know, that's the original. It's the original resistor. It's a big, nice dog bone resistor. I'd hate to replace it just willy-nilly to try to get a number dead on when it's not even that far off to begin with. So, yeah, I think we're just going to leave it where it is. Let's go ahead and button everything back up, get it back in the amplifier, put the finishing touches on this, and we'll give it a proper test. Okay, so I did a preliminary test of this thing, and it sounds pretty good. The only exception is the 6SC7 tube has some microphonic ring to it, so when you hit certain notes it ding. And I tried actually putting a couple of rings on there, little suppressor rings, and it really didn't do any good, so I'm gonna have to find a 6SC7 to replace that with. Okay, so I found another SC7, and this one is a tongue sole, and it's an SC7 GT in the glass bottle. This one actually tests okay. Here is triode number 1. It's not the greatest thing on earth, but it's testing good. And if I check the other triode, that one's even a little bit better. But, you know, I have to check and see if it's going to be microphonic inside the amplifier. So let's go ahead and slap it in the amp. Okay, run into some kind of problem here. I've got it plugged in to the Variac, and yes, it is this cord that's plugged in to the amplifier. And I've got it in the on position, and things not coming on. Nothing's happening. So I don't know what's up with that. Maybe we might have blown a fuse, and if we did blow a fuse, I'd have to wonder why. So, okay, well there we go. I got it to come up by flipping the switch a couple times. I think the switch may be bad. At least for right now, it seems to be okay. I think what I'll probably do is, after this test, I'll probably turn it off for a little while and spray out that switch and just switch it a few times and try to clean the contacts inside of there. And hopefully that will take care of it. But at least for right now, it's working. I do have the filaments are glowing for that new tube, and we'll see what this does. By the way, don't ever reach inside of this amp because you have direct access to all of the open stuff over here. The power stuff is all open, so be very careful. And it's facing up too, the connections. So don't reach in here and start wiggling tubes unless you know where everything is, especially over on this side. I mean, I feel okay with it right here because I'm just wiggling that one tube. But yeah, don't reach in here with this thing on or even plugged in. Alright guys, I think that's going to do it for this video. I've rambled on kind of long enough, I believe. An hour-long video is about the extent of what I want to try to tempt fate at on YouTube. I think this thing came out looking pretty great. The grill cloth, you know, the little repair that my wife did, it's not invisible, but she did a pretty good job, and I have to commend her on it. I don't think it's going to tear in the same place again. She did a pretty strong repair on that. I want to thank the guys at the Speaker Workshop up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Tom Colvin. If you guys need anything done, definitely get a hold of him. He seems like a really nice dude and seems like he really knows his stuff. Yeah, I know a lot of you guys also, you like to hear, you know, extended demos at the end of these videos, but I've got to get this thing up. It's really late at night. I'm already, you know, about a week behind getting a video up, and yeah, you know, I just want to go ahead and get something up. So I'll probably do a demo though and slap it over on channel 2. If you guys want to see more from this amplifier, definitely go over to channel 2 and subscribe over there for sure, so you guys can see updates and can kind of see outtakes from other videos and things of that nature. I will throw stuff up over there quite often. Also want to thank this video's new sponsor, Boney Wright. Definitely go check out their channel. I will put it up here. Give them a subscription. I think they're going to turn into a really nice channel. They've got a lot of good stuff up already, but yeah, I think it's going to be a really good one to follow. So definitely go follow that channel with me. And for now, we'll see y'all later.